I wish somebody would have told me this 40 years ago. October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and it's also Global Diversity Month. And today I want to talk about neurodiversity. And that term's likely not in your daily vocabulary, and it was new to me too. I have people very close to me on the autism spectrum, and I have many IT peers who have ADHD. And personally, I was diagnosed with adult ADHD a couple years ago, and it was a life-changing diagnosis that helped me stop fighting the wind and run with it. So what's it like having ADHD? Well, there's several cons and several pros, actually. um, Attention hyperactivity deficit disorder. I don't really consider it a disorder, and most people that you talk to don't consider it a disorder. If that's the person that has it, right? It's both a strength and a weakness sometimes. But so, what are some of the cons? So, remember the movie Speed with Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves? So they're in this bus and the accelerator is all the way to the floor. They've got to keep the speed above 50 miles an hour or the bus is going to blow up, right? And so they're always moving. And that's what it's like having ADHD. I stay constantly moving and I'm always moving, always busy, always doing something. Um, so while I'm not hyperactive, like the kid in the corner who's always bouncing, whatever, that's not necessarily me as an adult with ADHD, but I do stay moving a lot. As far as just constantly busy, my mind's always engaged. Problems with impulse control. Sometimes you're really tempted to interrupt people in a conversation because you see where it's leading, you know what they're going to say, and you've already reached that conclusion in your mind. It's like, okay, let's just get on with it. Let's keep going. Impulse control, like, oh, there's squirrel, right? Squirrel, how to stay focused. And manage those impulses to go look at, do something else when you're supposed to be focused on something that's really important, right? Sometimes with ADHD, it's like having, imagine 3 different monitors. Maybe you work with different monitors, in your home office. It's like having those inside your head and you've got different things all going at the same time. Distractions. Sometimes it's really hard to focus on the stuff that you're supposed to be doing right now, but it's kind of boring. And there's this other fun thing over here that you'd rather do. And then you get on that thing and you can go with some extreme focus. You're in the zone and you're flowing. And that stuff's fun and exciting. So you've got this dichotomy that's really bizarre with ADHD. You've got extreme focus and extreme distraction. And just getting the diagnosis and reading about it really helped me differentiate and understand the difference between those two and how they happen. I'm also a massive procrastinator. I put stuff off to the last minute, and ADHD people often perform very well under pressure at the deadline. Right before the deadline, that's when they turn it on, and then it's okay, it's go time. I mean, I can have an assignment that's due, a project that's due for weeks, and the night before I'm cranking it out, right? Now, so those are some of the struggles personally that I've identified with. Maybe yours are different with ADHD. The pros, though, what are the superpowers that you get when you have ADHD? So one of the things that I've noticed as a pattern throughout my life is that I can take large quantities of data, whether that's reading, learning a new subject, or teaching something. And so I've got to learn something new or look at a mass quantity of data. And then I can identify the patterns in that and distill it and simplify it and make it much easier to teach other people because I can see the patterns and say, okay, this is really all you need to know, right? Let's cut to the chase. That's how my brain works. So that's great for an architect role, kind of what I do at Tanium, helping people see where Tanium can help them in their business and putting things together, especially in IT where we're always learning new things. ADHD is perfect for that. And I have so many peers in IT who have ADHD, and we've had conversations about this. Also, like I have a hobby of astrophotography, and part of the problem with hobbies and ADHD is they're fun for a little while, and then you drop it like a hot potato. Like it's done. Whatever thing that I was focused on and all excited about, now that is just cold turkey gone. But so far, astrophotography, I've been on that hobby for about 3 years now. But the cool thing about that hobby is it requires learning 5 different disciplines that all require attention to detail. And I can get into the zone and the flow and see some really cool results. It takes a lot of effort to get there, but I can stick through it with that focus and flow. So there are some pros to having ADHD, and you can learn to use that. Now, how do I personally cope with ADHD? Some of my peers that I've talked to have chosen to do medications. There's nothing wrong with that. And I know that's a big decision. Do I take the medication or do I don't? What are the side effects? Personally, I've chosen not to take medication, but it's okay if you do. It really helps a lot of people. Personally, what I've learned to manage is avoiding sugar and carbs. If I eat a lot of carbs and sugar, it turns my brain into one of those rubber bouncing balls that just goes everywhere. I really have to focus, especially if you eat a sugary breakfast and then you sit down to try to work. That's not a good recipe, right? A lot of people say that caffeine helps them focus. Caffeine also gives me headaches, though. So I don't always like caffeine. So I don't use it often. And you really shouldn't get in the habit of using caffeine to treat your ADHD. I know that's kind of scary for people to think about. Okay, I'm just going to do caffeine, but it can help. Also, a keto diet. I remember I tried that diet a few years ago, and one of the things that impressed me about it was the mental clarity that I had while on that high-fat keto diet was helpful. Sometimes for me, I end up staying up late while the family's gone to bed, and then it's quiet time in the house, and I can focus and I can get in the zone. I don't have to worry about distractions or interruptions, and I can turn off all the lights. I spend time in the dark. I know that sounds weird sometimes because I enjoy astrophotography. I'm outside in the dark sometimes, but sometimes I'll be in the house in the dark simply because that's less visual input that I have to take in. Oh, I got to tell you the story. So back when I, in a previous role, I was traveling a lot. I was on airplanes all the time. And there were all these screens in the back of all the headrests, all these different movies going on. And here I'm trying to get work done. And it's like there's all these screens around me going on. And I'm not kidding. I actually sat down at the kitchen table one night. I took index cards and I punched holes in them and taped them together. And I made some blinders that went over my glasses. I could put it on my glasses, punched a couple holes. I slide my glasses in, and I'm sitting there in my airplane seat with these index cards, kind of making blinders so I can't see everything else going on around me that helped me focus. So yeah, you can get creative with it. Other things that help me focus. There's an app called brain.fm. There are other apps like it. I don't get any royalties. All right. Brain.fm helps me because it gives you music without lyrics, that it's not distracting, and it actually helps put your brain into a focus mode. And they've got different kind of modes. You can select different styles of music. And so I actually pay for the subscription in that app because I found it to be so helpful. I also use fidgets, and I know fidget spinners are really popular. At least they were kind of in vogue a few years ago, but I will use fidgets sometimes. And these things just keep my hands busy, my mind. And I think about fidgets like, if I'm standing at a conference, right? If you come up to me and I'm at a conference and we're talking, it's hard for me to focus on what you're saying sometimes because of all the people in the background behind you that are walking on and having different conversations. And I noticed when I was at a conference one time, I picked up a fidget spinner from a booth at another vendor, and I'm sitting there playing with a fidget spinner, talking to somebody. And I noticed that I could focus on what they were saying because there's like 2 different tracks going in my head all the time. So if I take one track and I focus on that background track in my head on doing the fidget, then the other foreground track, we think about computer processes, right? The foreground process then is focused on you or whatever I'm supposed to be focused on. If it's on a work meeting where I'm trying to pay attention, fidget helps me occupy that background distraction track so that I can focus on what's in front of me. Also, I use Microsoft OneNote. I have for years. It's on all my personal and work devices. And I take notes copiously because I don't trust myself to remember things, because I'm distractible and I can forget things very easily. I have a lot of ideas that I want to capture. ADHD people are often very creative, and I want to capture those things. So I have tons of journals for all kinds of different things, work and personal, in OneNote, that helps me stay organized to remember those things, and I don't have to worry about losing them. Another side effect of ADHD is taking on too much. It can torpedo your work-life balance because there's all these cool things. Oh, there's this and that and this and that, and I want to do this and that. And I realized before my diagnosis that I would have 8 to 10 months of productivity, and then it would reach a climax where I hit burnout and I would just crash. And after doing that cycle several times, I said, okay, stop the madness. Something has to change with the way my life works. And I'm like, God, what's going on inside my head? Why can I not fall asleep when I lay my head on the pillow? And it's like this radio station just keeps going in my head. What's going on? And so then I actually went out, I got a counselor. I did some research on my own on the internet, and I'll talk about that in a second. But then more recently, something that's really helped me is the ancient concept called Sabbath, which is taking some time away where you just put away all the devices, and I don't schedule anything. So for me, what that looks like is Friday night after dinner to about noon on Saturday. I'll just literally unplug. I don't schedule anything. It's time for me and my family, and time for just me, and time for me to do something that I enjoy, rather than always giving out to other people. I do that a lot at work and in my personal life and other responsibilities. I can use that time just to set aside just for me to focus on recharging. And that has helped me so much because I have that buffer now. And every week I have this little bit of buffer. And I know that even if I'm heads down and I feel overwhelmed, that I've got that little release valve. It's called Sabbath. And maybe it's people just call it unplugging. Maybe you go out for a walk. Maybe for me, I do some astrophotography, whatever you want to do to find some time just to unplug to help with that balance. All right. And maybe something else works for you. So what's life like with a diagnosis for ADHD? Well, it's given me a framework for understanding the way my brain is wired, and I can work with it instead of fighting it. That has made all the difference in my life. Getting a diagnosis for ADHD really solved so many challenges. Now, I still have these idiosyncrasies of the way my behavior works, but I'm now able to understand it and understand why my brain works that way. And then I can begin to work with it and redirect it. I can now manage my own behavior better. When my impulse control is like, hey, that looks shiny, I want to go do that thing, I say, no, I can redirect myself to focus. No, I have to get this done, right? So I can work with some of those things, but also I can work with it in a positive way where, okay, I know that I'm going to allocate some time and I'm going to go down the rabbit hole. I'm going to let my brain just run, and I'm going to go extreme focus on this thing. And I'm going to have like all this pleasure that's triggered in my brain from just going deep on something for hours and hours, right? And I can schedule that and work with it and really enjoy that aspect of having ADHD. Also, it's helped with my family life. My family understands now why I do some things the way I do, and there's more understanding in our relationships that way. And so I also, when it comes to procrastination, I can just lean into that deadline. I do try to manage my calendar well. I put my appointments. I also put my to-do list in my calendar, so they're always in front of me. So I can try to manage my deadlines, things that are coming up. So those are some things that I have learned to do. Having the diagnosis, it's like turning the light on. Okay, now I can see, I understand. IT, we talk about frameworks, right? Well, this is that diagnosis, and doing some reading really gave me a framework of how to make my life work better with ADHD. I do have some resources I want to recommend to you. If you don't get anything else out of this video, I want you to take this away. Go out online, even if you suspect maybe you have ASD, autism spectrum disorder, or ADHD, or something, that go online and find a self-assessment test. For ADHD, there's this short little 12-question self-assessment test. You can do it yourself, give it to a family member or significant other, have them do it for you as well. And it can give you a really quick indicator. Is this what's going on with my brain? I wish somebody would have told me this 40 years ago. I've midlife as an adult, and there are decades of my life that I wouldn't say that I suffered with ADHD, but it impacted my life in ways that were not always good. There were good impacts, but then there were some negative impacts. And if I had known what it was that was going on in my brain, I could have worked with that and avoided some difficult situations earlier in my life. So the one thing I want to make sure you do, if you suspect you have ADHD, go out, just do a quick search online. You'll find it. It's everywhere online. ADHD self-assessment. Fill that out, and then go do some reading. When I went, because I focus on things sometimes when I'm not distracted, I focused on ADHD, and I did all this research, and I bought these books, and I went to a counselor, and I said, here's my self-assessment. Here's what I've read in these books. I think I have ADHD. Can you help me? That's the ADHD way to treat your ADHD, right? So go get a self-assessment. Just it's really quick. Find it online. Also, there are a ton of books out there. The cornerstone book on ADHD is by a guy named Ed Hollowell. He's got a podcast as well. The book's called Driven to Distraction. He has another book called Delivered from Distraction. Now, of course, being a person with ADHD who has a hard time focusing, I have not read those books cover to cover. I actually, I think the second one, Delivered from Distraction, I think that's what it was. It's been a few years now. I got the book, and I turned to this chapter that I skimmed through the table of contents. I turned to this chapter, and it says, if you have ADHD, you turned straight to this chapter first when you got the book. And it's like, no way. Like, he called it. The author of the book had ADHD. And so he had this massive checklist, like 160 traits or something of people with ADHD. And I'm just going down the list. Yes, that's me. That's me. Well, not that, but oh my goodness, I found my people finally. It was like turning a light bulb on. I understood what was going on in my head. So check out those books and the podcast by Ed Hollowell. There's a whole bunch of resources out there. You just put in ADHD and in your favorite place to buy books, and you'll find it there. Also on Twitter, I started following a lady named Danny Donovan, who's done some really interesting memes, probably not the right word, maybe art, so diagrams that kind of show what goes on with ADHD struggles. It was really helpful. There's a Reddit forum, kind of hot and cold experience there, but there's a lot of places to find help. But the number one thing I would recommend to you today, this month of October here, is Global Diversity Awareness Month. That includes neurodiversity, and ADHD is real. It's not just for kids who can't pay attention in school. It happens to adults. And if you've been struggling with focus and distraction, maybe this can help you. So I would encourage you to go find one of those self-assessments. And then if you'd like to continue a conversation about ADHD, find a forum online. You can even reach out to me on LinkedIn or Twitter, and I would enjoy having a conversation with you well. So for this Go-Tanium Nerd Talk, these are just short talks that I do, sometimes that are very off topic. Usually I try to keep them shorter, but this one I wanted to take a little bit more time just so you get to know a little bit more about me, and hopefully I can help somebody out there as well. So now you know a little bit more about neurodiversity and ADHD. And I hope this is really helpful for you or somebody that you know.